And last but not least, hi Bobby, hi Bobby, hi Bobby, hi Bobby, hi Bobby, hi Bobby.
Hi,
Yes,
Ken.
we're finally. Hi Ken. How can we forget about Ken, right? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like the theme of the movie. But how can we forget
Oh,
about Ken?
poor
Hopefully we don't
Ken.
forget about Ken after. Oh man.
Oh boy, yes, yes, yes. Finally, we're gonna talk about probably one of the most unexpected films of this decade, and we already
sir.
2.5 years in. Barbie, yes, directed by the great Greta Gerwig, and this is actually her fourth feature film, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I
And
think
sorry,
I thought it was third because I know Lady Bird, Little
Lady Bird,
Women,
Little Women,
and
and
then
She
what
has
else?
one that she did before that was
Before,
smaller.
right?
But
oh,
then,
was it like
No,
a
the thing is,
feature?
I know it's the star of a movie, but not the director. But her
Francis Ha.
as
Same,
Frances
yeah.
Ha, right? But that's what
Yes.
Noah Baumbach did that.
yes, yes, yes. I think
Which is
that was actually my introduction to Noah
To her.
and Greta. Yeah.
Yeah.
it is so great to see them team up to write Barbie. It also makes so much sense when you actually watch Barbie.
Yeah, that's what.
Totally works.
Like
It's kind of
there's a
brilliant to
lot
get.
of Noah. Like this is very Greta Gerwig. There's a lot of Noah Baumbach in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
were saying, Ricardo?
it's very no, yeah, it's pulling from like I don't know what to call. They're the kind of the leader, the two best to come out of the mumblecore movement, right?
Yes.
And how to describe that is like what the French New Wave for millennials. I see my break my reductionistic breakdown of that. Yeah, like I just so happy that when I heard she was doing the movie, I was like, all right, I think I know what I might get. And yeah, I kind of got that. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, that's just quick preamble, right? And well, Tracy, if you don't mind, if you don't mind doing the honors, please, sir,
yeah.
I want you to do
Yeah.
the synopsis, and you get to deliver the first review.
Oh, joy. Okay.
Yeah. Because reason being is because yes, the moment that I think even
But I
before the first
apologize to
trailer dropped.
everybody.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I feel like Tracy could have handled all the marketing for Barbie here in Trinidad, and it would have been handled stellarly.
I
If that's the
accepted.
word.
Listen, I told my people, and I said it online a good few times. I was like, listen, I apologize in advance for the kind of person that I will become over the next few months. I didn't realize how much of an insufferable person I would become, but listen, it was worth it.
Yeah, it certainly was, right? But yeah, the moment we heard this thing was going to be a reality, I really have to say this, a reality. I didn't really know what to make of it. I think, for me personally, I just sort of came at it sort of cynically, like, okay, and I think this is what makes the show work so well, right? Because it kind of counters that. Yeah, Hollywood's running out of ideas, man. So, okay, what are we gonna do next?
Right.
Okay, Barbie. All right, really? You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, expectation. I didn't really know what to make of it when we heard it was in production, right? But when we first saw the first trailer fit, and I'll talk about the trailer fit in my review, right?
My God.
Which incorporates, 2001: A Space Odyssey, again going back to Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, I was like, okay, this looks like something. And of course, Margot Robbie, huge fan, just great magnetic screen presence from her. Yeah, she's pitch perfect to play Barbie, right? And then when you see everybody else who's involved, whether it's Simi Lou or Ryan Gosling, like, oh, of course, McGill Issa Rae, like, all right, okay, what's going on here? But it still look cool, right? And then the second trailer drops, and I was like, oh, that's what the story is about. Okay, I like this. I like that. It's sort of a flip on, the whole 90s stuff, like where you see with like, say for example, those TV to film adaptations that people don't really remember, like Beverly Hillbillies, or Brady Bunch,
Yes.
where it's the old characters from the old show, but they're put into the 90s, whatever. Well, I mean, Adam's Family
Oliver.
did great, right? But like you see Brady Bunch try to do it, Beverly Hillbillies do it, where it's the old characters, but they're in the
That's a
90s,
memory
and,
memory.
and that's a joke.
It's one of those concepts that's only been done well. It's the fish out of water concept, but it's only really been done well like twice. But they
Right.
keep trying it in different iterations. Like again, you mentioned the Brady Bunch and the Beverly Hillbillies
What
movies.
about Enchanted? I thought Enchanted did it
I
well.
was thinking of
Yeah.
Enchanted did it well.
I love
Enchanted did it
yeah.
well.
Yeah, well, I'm more thinking about like properties that we know about, right? Like
That's
actual
true,
TV
that's
shows, or like that. That's what I'm talking about.
The Masters of the Universe movie was
Right.
No.
Oh.
Oh, that show was hilarious. That was hilarious. But yo, but back to Barbie, right? But yeah, when that second trailer dropped, I was like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, I like this. This is clever. I like this, and that really got me excited, right? And then, of course, it was just this massive, promotion for the film, whether it's through the Barbenheimer memes or, whether it's just the pink and the blue and all that kind of stuff. The soundtrack, that particular track with Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj, a song which grew on me. Like at first, when I hear it, I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. But the more I listen, it's like, all right, this is a bop. I like this. This real hard. And I was actually I was actually listening to it before, like, waiting for the movie to start when I saw it yesterday. I was just like kind of done in my head and kind of watching to see if anybody was gonna make more, you know what I mean? But whatever. And before, in case you're all wondering, no, I did not go to the cinema dressed in pink because I have no pink clothes. I went in with my Wu-Tang shirt because I still geeking off of hearing Cream on Transformers Rise of the Beast, right? So I was like, yo, Wu-Tang is for the children, right? So yeah, whatever. But yeah, I just went in and I just noticed people dressing in, not a lot of people, of course, but some people dressed in pink. I was like, all right, I'll go and see Barbie. And of course, that was like a joke, on TikTok, like, some comedians will come out and say, oh, you're gonna see Barbie, that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, the hype was real with this, right? And I was really excited to see how this movie is gonna play out, right? I heard some things about it, some existential things about it, but other than that, I was just like, all right, I just want to see how a Barbie film directed by Greta Gerwig that incorporates Mattel itself is going to play it. How is that going to work, right? And well, we will get into that with our review. So, Tracy, you have the order. Take it away. You're going to deliver the synopsis and the review and the rating. So, take it away, sir. Barbie, what is it about?
This is where you put in the cracked knuckles sound effect. Because I have to stretch here a little bit.
Yeah, I just like kind of did it, but I don't think my mic picked it up. But yeah, go on.
Okay, so Barbie, the film Barbie, explores the idea of, you're meeting stereotypical Barbie, which is Margot Robbie's character. She is not the most important Barbie in the film, like there's President Barbie and all the other types, but she is, the stereotypical Barbie. And every day is a great day for Barbie, and every day is a great day in Barbie world, except certain things start creeping into Barbie world through stereotypical Barbie, and she starts to get what I have been rambling about, the idea of an existential crisis. She starts to wonder things. You see, if you saw the trailers, you saw that piece where she's asking, do you guys ever think about death? These things start happening. Suddenly her perfect reality is no longer perfect. Her feet are now flat on the ground. She's getting cellulite on the side of her leg. She doesn't float anymore. And she goes on this journey now into our world, into the real world, where she has to connect, and I'm not going to go into spoilers, you have to go see it. She has to connect with someone in the real world in order to fix what is happening over in Barbie Land. But also, Ken has finally gotten a glimpse of what life is like in our world, and things develop from there. So the story is, on all the marketing, it says she's Barbie and he's just Ken. It's pretty much that, but it's also an exploration into the idea of what is Ken, where does Ken fit in with Barbie? Sam Smith has a song on the soundtrack, Man That I Am, that I just think is a perfectly hilarious take on Ken all by himself. But that is where it goes. And then at the end of the film, she comes back into Barbie Land, and certain choices presented to her, certain choices are made, and she comes to a new idea of what she wants to do with her life. That is the general synopsis. This film, let me tell you guys something. Like I said sometime earlier, my geek sister Stacy, she and I have this running thing of going opening day to see whatever film, superhero film, whatever kind of film. And she took me to see Dungeons and Dragons, because Dungeons and Dragons is not something that would be on my radar, but I went to see it, and it was a beautiful film. I had fun with it. It was good. And she says, okay, I am now priming myself to go see Barbie, because I know you're going to drag me to see Barbie. And that I did. Granted, she had fun. She told me never to pick a movie again because it was a little too much, but she had fun. I have been preparing my brain for Barbie, and I've also been thinking about where I fit into this. Because, like, when I was growing up, not to say like I had Barbie dolls or even action figures, quote unquote, the ground, but I did have, I did have, female friends who would have had some Barbies. There's always some tiny human around the house or something like that who would come and they would have their little dolls. So it's always hilarious to see them because they always drag you into these things. I think my main memory of Barbie is like the 90s where you're sitting down watching whatever cartoon and Mattel brings out some new Barbie and, there's like about 9 different Barbies in this, you're sitting down watching Looney Tunes, or Tiny Toons, and there is a Barbie commercial, and she's brilliant, and she's there, and she's doing all the things. There's 2 things in terms of that. One, and this is a random thing, but for years I would walk around in the office whenever something was going wrong, and just start to be like Barbie, Barbie, litigation, Barbie, because I know somebody was going to get sued for the kind of decisions that they were doing, and it's just, it's things like that, and it kind of makes me wonder if all of these things are the reason why I ended up in advertising. But anyhow, or like just randomly, something happens and you say to somebody, anything is possible with Barbie, because that was Mattel's tagline in the 90s. They've changed it. If I'm not mistaken, they've changed it to you can be anything. So the focus is now more you versus Barbie, but anything is possible with Barbie. And so, you have that. And then the Toys That Made Us. The Toys That Made Us, that series, when it came out, I remember when they were doing a whole deep dive and breakdown into the history of Barbie. It's not just some random doll that was there, but like how she got, what was inspired by her name, or the fact that, there was an adult X-rated type cartoon in Europe. And in terms of how her design is, she's kind of looks a little like that, but it's not meant to be X-rated. It's for kids. And even the uproar when Midge was created, because conservative parents and everybody was like, oh my God, no, we can't have this Barbie, this Midge character telling kids, that it's okay to have children. What is this about? It was a whole kind of weird, ridiculousness with it. So all of that teamed into the fact that, like the He-Man movie, which will never go anywhere, Barbie was this property that was shipped around for years. It was something that, we were being told at one point in time, Amy Schumer was meant to be involved in it. I remember hearing a rumor once that Anne Hathaway was meant to be involved in Barbie. And it just kept coming back and going and coming back and going. And then the first shot, not even the idea, because I love Greta, but like, okay, Greta's doing a Barbie movie, fine. That first shot at CinemaCon last year, I think it was, where they just showed you the shot of Margot in her Barbie in her car, and Ryan Gosling as Ken with his like Calvin Ken type underwear and his jeans, and you look at that and it's like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a moment. This is going to be perfection. And I am pleased to report that this movie is in fact perfection. It was one of those things where, okay, so I did the double feature and I went to see Oppenheimer first. I strongly advise, if you're going to do 2 movies on the same day, go see Oppenheimer first. Taking that existentialism and that, exploration of the human psyche and soul with Oppenheimer, and then go take in the exploration of the human psyche and soul with Barbie.
Yep.
Because, like, a slight spoiler, but nothing too much. There's a commercial in the film for Depression Barbie, and
that was hilarious, man. It catch me completely by surprise too. Huh?
Killed me.
I sat down there and I looked at it. I was like, "This is me," but wow, this is a real wow. And then my geek sister, she was like, "If they don't launch a Depression Barbie just for limited run, I'm going to riot." And I feel like it's a testament to the film. Like, the film is a celebration, and I'm going to say this: it's a celebration of women. I myself am not a woman. I don't have a card or anything that says, this is who I am. I am not a woman. I feel like Barbie does this thing where it touches on so many points that you can see yourself, you can feel the connectivity in it. I just want to throw this out for all the conservatives all over the world, because whatever happens in the US always filters down into Trinidad and Tobago. It is not anti-man. There is a whole arc where Ken has to go and figure out what he is, who he is, how he matters,
Right.
does he matter? Because it's Barbie and Ken.
Right.
Barbie came first. Even Greta was talking about the idea of I think CC, even you had posted it in the group, is the idea of Greta doing the whole creation story, where instead
But
of
it was, yeah.
God making man, yes, Barbie came first and then Ken. So Ken has to go and find his own exploration. And even like in the song that Ryan has the song "I'm Just Ken," and even in
Brilliant
that,
song.
he has to,
Yes.
figure out what does it mean to be a Ken. And I want to say as well that, like Oppenheimer, for me, I didn't think that any of the other roles were badly cast or badly suited. Like, okay, like Kuti, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but basically the new Doctor. New Doctor,
Right.
Kuti.
Gabriel, right. Yeah. He was in this here. Yeah.
He's a Ken, but he's a sporty Ken, like from the 80s, 90s,
Right.
kind of that outfit. So he's a sporty Ken. And his Ken doesn't exactly say a whole heap and much, but he is there and provides that very cool variation of Ken next to the two, for whatever better way of putting it, the two alphas in Ken and Simu Ken.
I thought Gravik was hilarious in this role. His face was just flat.
Kinsley, yes.
Yeah.
His Ken is just a whole, and I'm told in some cinemas they actually had subtitles. So like there's Pompadour Ken, which is what Simalu was, and then there's Kingsley's Ken was just Ken or some other. So they actually gave them like variations of it. The score, the level of craftsmanship, well, not really score, but the level of craftsmanship in the soundtrack, the placement of where each song goes in, Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For? I am going to be real with you. It still brings tears to my whole ass eyes, because no matter where you are, I feel like everybody can feel like, why am I here?
Yeah.
What is the point? Where are we going with life? What do I do next? And Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For comes in well with that. Sam Smith has a line in his song Man That I Am that it cracks me up. It's like, he says, no, I'm not gay, bro, but I'm here on the down low. And it's just so, all these masculine men who doing these masculine things, but there's a whole thing that happens. And I'm just laughing my head off about that. Ken walking into the hospital and saying, he's going to do X, Y, and Z because he's a man.
I love that scene.
That's just, that's just brilliant. And even, the idea of, and Greta talked about this in some of the behind the scenes stuff, it's the idea of Barbie floating down from where she is and getting into her car, because as someone who's playing with a Barbie, you don't walk her down. You take her from what room she's in and you bring her down, and you have to follow that kind of thing. This movie could have, you know what this is? This movie could have been like gone on a level of camp that could have been really, really bad. And this movie could have gone in a way where it could have just been, because I mean, there's new dolls and stuff, so obviously Mattel going to make some money. But it could have just been a cash grab, but it didn't. There was so much heart. There was so much soul. In fact, even having the idea of America Ferrera, because America is a human in the film who comes to Barbie Land, and seeing the world through stereotypical Barbie's eyes, and then seeing the world through America's eyes, who is her character Gloria is working at Mattel, but is not at the level that Will Ferrell and the rest of them are. She doesn't get invited into the boardrooms. It's really something. And when you think of the history of Mattel and the history of Barbie being made by a woman and calling Barbie after her daughter, and it's a conference room of men with one in particular saying, "Could you call me mother?" There's so many layers and levels there of the patriarchy, of matriarchy, of capitalism, of modern existence, of existential crisis after crisis, and how do you transform yourself into that, and at the same point in time manages to be humorous, not humorous in a way that it causes the seriousness of the film to get swallowed, and vice versa. I'm going to just quickly wrap up here by saying I think I hope to high heaven, and I know that studios will not do this, but I hope to high heaven that studios realize that film is meant to be, and therefore it's not like, oh well, Barbie did really well because it did this, or this double feature did really well because whatever. Let a film breathe. Let it be what it needs to be, and you will have hopefully a really good product. And I saw a thing at the a couple of days ago, like yesterday or Friday, where it was saying a studio head wanted to take out a studio executive wanted to take out a scene between Barbie and an older lady at the bus shelter where she looked at her.
I saw that article too. Mm-hmm.
I saw that, and I'm reminded of how Patty had to fight these people because they wanted to take out the no man's land scene in Wonder Woman, and it was pivotal for Diana. But that scene, as small as it was pivotal because you're talking about the idea of beauty, and when you reach a certain age, people look at you and be like, "Oh no, you're not beautiful." The whole Kiki Palmer thing comes out, and people is like, "She's a mom." And SNL did a whole joke years ago about the idea of you're no longer a woman, you're a mom, so wear mom jeans. And it's the same thing with external beauty. The idea of when you reach a certain level or a certain age, you're no longer beautiful. You're just grandma. You're just mom. You're just auntie. And for Barbie to look at her and be like, "You are so beautiful," and that is what you wanted to take out. Give me a break. So for me, Barbie is brilliant. To quote Jack from Lost, we have to go back. We have to go back. We have to go back. So I know that's going to happen. The score is brilliant. The practicality of how they did their sets, because there was like some behind the scenes stuff. How those sets was made. I remember watching Down with Love when it came out, and I had the DVD until I eventually ruined it. And that whole Down with Love, the whole idea of using the matte background to do the skyline and having that there. And it was the same idea of having a painted skyline and having, the actual props. And how do you make the road move? Well, you do this. And you have like a treadmill and you build it like, in a world where we could have just said, here's a green box or a blue box, go to town.
Let's like, CG that shit.
This is, let's right.
They could have CG'd the whole thing if they wanted to, but no. And like, if I sent you that article, the one where Greta Gerwig breaks down all the films that inspired Barbie, and she's listing like The Wizard of Oz, A Matter of Life and Death, and like Singing in the Rain, but like specifically the Dream Within a Dream ballet sequence,
right?
Like, damn.
What's the name of that movie? Old movie, Umbrellas of. Oh gosh.
Schoenberg, I think.
Schoenberg, yeah.
She named 3 different Jacques Demy movies as direct inspiration. I forget the third one, but like Umbrellas of Schoenberg and The Young Girls of Rushford as direct inspirations. Like, that,
I mean, when you take all of that and you pour it in, and you have all the big splashy headlines of worldwide pink shortage. But you have also hearing how Greta's thought process is the idea of having Kate McKinnon as weird Barbie. And somebody was actually putting up a joke recently about the idea that actually weird Barbie and stereotypical Barbie have been together in a thing before. And I forgot about the fact that they were both in Bombshell. About Fox. So that was a whole height unto itself. All right. So this is me now shutting up, but I will say. I will just give my score one time as well and say this is also a rare 10 out of 10 for me. I don't have any notes. In fact, to paraphrase Nicki Minaj, it's a 10 and it pulled in a Ken. And I really love this film. I love everything that it did. I love the fact that, I walked in there with my I Survived Barbenheimer pink t-shirt and my jacket and everything like that. And there was so much pink. And, it wasn't just the girls in pink. it was the boys in pink with their pink ties and their pink outfits and stuff like that, because they understood, or people understood. Well, actually, maybe that might be an overpromise, but I want to believe that people understood that this film was made for everybody, even though it would touch on a lot that's going on in a woman's life. And that end scene was brilliant. That end scene was fantastic. And it is not where I thought that they were going to play it. I thought she was going to get a job in Mattel, but that end scene was great. So yes, 10 out of 10 for me. I'm going to shut up now.
All right, well, I will share my thoughts, and then Ricardo, CC, and then we'll end with Summer, if you don't mind, because you just came back from seeing the film, right? So you have a little time to be like, all right, Tracy, right?
Only woman here.
Well, right, well, all right, you catch me. Yes, that's why. I'm sorry, but it's true, right?
The woman goes last. I get it.
Okay, well, it's called saving. Listen. It's called saving the best for last, right? It's like that song from the 90s that we grew up on, right? Anyway, right? So, the biggest compliment I could give Barbie, right? Like, this is how I see this film in the next, 5 to 10 years, Tread. This is going to be a true cult classic, in my opinion, right? And this is coming from somebody who loves cult films, who loves just the unique kind of idiosyncratic vibe when it comes to just directors and films that are just not, traditional or not mainstream. It just has something really special and unique about it, right? And I got that with literally every minute of this film, right? This feels like something totally new, totally fresh, different and whatnot. And just as somebody who loves weird shit or just unique shit, I just love that, a studio like Warner Brothers, right, or Warner Discovery, if you will, could say, all right, Greta, we're going to give you X amount of money, and you're going to make a film about Barbie, and you could just go as weird and crazy as possible. And she does that, but it still works, and it still has very strong messages. It explores a lot of complex themes when it comes to gender and gender roles and stuff like that. But it does it so well, though, in my opinion, right? So just to get a couple of gripes out of the way, I would just say most of the jokes land, right? But there's just a couple, or just a few, where it's just it's not bad, but it's just all right, I get, all right, okay. It didn't make me laugh out loud, but it's all right, I get, okay. Also, I think this runs for about close to 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I felt that it does run a little long, right? Just a few beats that didn't really quite work with me, right? So one in particular, unfortunately, I have to see this involving Will Ferrell, right, who plays the CEO of Mattel. I felt like they could have done more with him. When he's there, he's goofy and he's silly, but you expect that from Will Ferrell. He does that very well, right? But yeah, I felt they could have done a little bit more with this character, because I like him as the guy who is trying to chase the rogue or renegade Barbie, right? And try to bring her back into her own world, and, everything will be all right, right? So I like that aspect. I like just how silly, his staff is, and, them going out of the way to chase them. And, it's just all these, side gags, right? And then lastly, there was a little, just going off a scene that literally yesterday, right? I believe there's a moment where Will Ferrell's character says that, if Barbie stays, if she does not, if Margot Robbie's Barbie does not stay, if doesn't return into her world, then basically both worlds will sort of blend into each other now, so I was expecting something like that to happen. We would really see the effects of what would happen if a Barbie were to leave Barbie world, right? You would really see the side effects of that, and I didn't really see that. He say it, I was looking out for it, but we don't really get that, because actually right after going into going into the real world, that would be Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling's characters. Yeah, they kind of, for reasons, go back, which I understand. I mean, it makes sense, right? But I just felt that we could have gotten a little bit more of the side effects of what will happen if they stay longer in the world, right? But to the show's credit, I do like how it kind of goes, how unconventional it is, right? So it's kind of playing on the viewer's expectation that, the rest of the show is going to be about Barbie and Ken in the real world, and we're going to see what happens there. It's no, not exactly. And I like that. I actually praise the film for that, for just kind of saying, no, you think it's going to be like that, but nope, we're not doing that. We're going to show you how kind of like the real world, like just the stuff that goes on in the real world in terms of gender and whatnot, how it's going to be reflected in Barbie world, and just how silly it is, right? I just like how over the top and insane and crazy it is, though, and everybody just plays it very, very well, right? So just to get the performances out the way, Margot Robbie is pitch perfect as Barbie. She sells it. I did not expect that she would call herself stereotypical Barbie, but it makes a lot of sense. I was just kind of watch like, oh, she's a Barbie, but I didn't know what the term was or what she's gonna call herself, right? Okay, you know, from the trailers and whatnot, you see a lawyer, you see a judge, you see a president, but I didn't think that she's gonna be the stereotypical one, right? But it makes a lot of sense, right? And I love how meta the movie is as well too, because it kind of plays on, you know, Margot Robbie herself just being an actress, and you know, just how photogenic she is, and just how people kind of perceive her. Like they just think, oh, it's just about looks and just about her really, 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 really radiant smile. But no, she can really act her ass off, and she has like comedic timing down, you know, perfect, right? And she sells it as stereotypical Barbie, right? It's not just her smiling and saying, hi, Barbie, and stuff like that. She gets, like, these genuinely emotional moments, though, and they totally work, right? The moments with her kind of figuring out her identity, especially near the end, where she wants to know where she should go, right? You know, and now with all the things that she know about her life and whatnot, they totally work, right? And there's a nice little cameo that I'll say where it's sort of Matrix-like. Let me just say without spoiling anything. It's Neo and the Architect. Yeah, it's basically Neo and the Architect.
Neo and the Oracle, yeah.
Neo and the Oracle. Okay, well, I was thinking Architect because of the setting, that's all I'll say.
Right.
And speaking of Matrix, points for having that little reference to the Matrix with the red and blue pill. With,
they had that. And they had the doors.
Yes, in Mattel, in the Mattel, they have this long hallway with these doors, which is very reminiscent of Matrix Reloaded, right? But Kate McKinnon, who does the whole choice thing, I thought that was great, and the payoff was worth it, right?
Hilarious,
and you know, she just plays weird, quirky characters very well. That's why I love her in SNL, right? Yeah, she was great as Weird Barbie, and the concept of Weird Barbie is perfect to me. I love that, right? The other Barbies are there, and I like that they don't take up too much screen time, but when they're there, they do their thing, right? I was glad to see McGill Issa Rae in it as well.
Yeah, I thought she was a bit underutilized, but I thought she was still good, yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised to see Alexandra Shipp. She plays Rita Barbie. It's like, hey, I know your face from somewhere, right? All right, too cool. I don't remember. I didn't expect her to sneak in Dua Lipa. She played Mermaid Barbie. I was like, okay, cool. Right. And speaking of that, though, John Cena is a man that if you pay him just enough money, he will do anything. So him playing a merman version of Ken, I was like, all right, Cena. I see you, Ken. I see you, John. I see you.
I feel like John Cena's sense of humor alone would speak to doing something like that. I don't even think it's the money. I just think he seems like that type of person.
Yeah, exactly.
If you told me that John Cena showed up in Barbie as a merman, as a merken for free, I'd believe you. Like, I would absolutely believe you that he did that for free.
Michael Cera as Alan had me cracking up though, because he this random ball. It's like, I'm Alan, right? There's a fight scene that just comes out of nowhere with him, and I was loving all that. It was just, but that's the thing I just love about the show, right? Just how unexpected these jokes are, just how wild and weird it is, right? And just going back to cult films, the show as a whole just hit my, it just touched on my cult film sensibilities, right?
It has a Barbarella feel to it.
Yes, it did.
Ironically.
Yeah, the lavish set designs. The
minute you said Barbarella, I was like, oh, I had not thought of Barbarella until this moment, but the minute you said it, it made the most sense in the world.
Right?
Yeah. you know what film I was thinking about too when it comes to cult films too.
What?
And I saw it with the Just Ken music number. I was picking up on some Rocky Horror Picture Show vibes. Like it had that kind of vibe to it, the sort of Broadway style to how the production is, how the song is presented, where what we mean is like, it's not just a character just singing to the camera. It will lead to some kind of set piece and some kind of big action moment or whatever it is. So like, the moment, cause it kind of starts off as this sort of prog rock kind of thing, but then it just switches into like 80s rock, right? Hair metal, if you will. And that's when you just get this big scene with Ken's fighting and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so lavish and so over the top. I was like, this is a cult classic in the making. I love this. I love stuff like this, right? And just mainly because of how unique it is, right? And most of all, what I really appreciate about this film is, right, is that despite all the weird stuff that is seen and all the, the humor and all that kind of stuff, it's still a fun movie, right? Yes, they touch on existential themes and, themes of identity and all that kind of stuff, but it's still a fun film, right? I would say just, like for me, just watch this, but I had this dumb smile on my face watching this, though.
Yeah.
The moment I was just hearing these musical cues. So like I said earlier on, I started listening to the soundtrack before the movie even started, right? So I heard McGill Lizzo, do the first song Pink, right? That's the first song that opens the soundtrack, right? And surprise, surprise, that's the first song that opens this movie. And I'm like, wow, Lizzo, you are having a hell of a year, boy. First you win a Grammy, then you make it to Mandalorian. Now you opening a film, right? And just to touch on music quickly, right? I love how it touches on different like time periods when it comes to pop music, right? So like Lizzo's song Pink, right? It's clearly drawing from All Night Long. Like if you listen to the music, like just the warm beats and everything like that, it's All Night Long, right? It's their version of it, right? And she, of course, with her voice commits it, but it's not just songs and singing, right? It's how it works into the story. So yeah, similar to Everything Is Awesome from the Lego movie, it's her basically describing, hey, this is my day and, this is how my life is, right? But I love how it gets even meta. So like the more like, Margot Robbie's character starts thinking, wait, why is this day started the same way? You hear it with Lizzo's like vocals too, and I love that. That was great, right? Also mad points now for bringing in Helen Mirren to be the narrator. I can't remember the name of the film, but it's one that Will Ferrell starred in. I think it was where he had a narrator of his own, and I think it was her or somebody else, right? Yeah. And it's like,
No, not Lost in Translation.
No. Stranger Than Fiction. That's the name of it. Yes, it reminds me a lot of Stranger Than Fiction, right? But that, I thought it works too. I love how meta it was to, you're just thinking, oh, it's just Once Upon a Time, Barbie and Ken, blah blah blah, right? But the moment she dropped that thing about, clearly Margot Robbie is the best character, best actress to embody that works. And I thought that the framing of it was great, right? So just slight spoiler, it involves Margot without makeup. And I thought that was like great, right? So kind of like dissecting the idea of what Barbie is, right? And just to touch on the themes of the film, that's what really roped me in, right? So I just love that it's exploring that. It's exploring the perception of beauty and, the realistic perceptions of, the unrealistic and realistic perceptions of it too, right? So just having, Margot Robbie's character at her lowest and she has no makeup on, right? And then you have, Helen Mirren see that. I thought that was like perfect. I just love that, right? As far as humor goes, right, like I say, a majority of the jokes land. Just a few was like meh, right? I will lie though, just seeing it with it, the experience of watching it in a theater, right, with a large crowd. I would strongly recommend if you could see with a large crowd, that would be great, right? Not expecting you to that when you go in there will be a large crowd, but if there is one, then you're lucky, right? But yeah, I don't think anybody expected the level of the style of jokes that we got there, boy, because it wasn't just meta stuff. It was stuff that kind of will fly over kids' heads, and it was just stuff that was just like purposefully, I should say, purposely mature, right? So like the moment where they mention the whole genital stuff, right, which I believe Tracy brought up, yeah, people was like, be like kind of startled by it, no, but they chuckle as well too, and they laugh as well, but I don't think anybody saw that coming, right? And I love that. I love that it also challenged the viewers too, because I know many people will go into this thing and just expect goofy Barbie, Barbie stuff and Barbie references. But no, we're going to realistically show you how a doll in the real world will actually like play out, right? And that's why I love the inclusion of America Ferrera's character and the daughter as well too, especially what the daughter says about what Barbie is as a symbol. That one was like oof, and it actually makes sense, right? So in a nutshell, I just love how the show itself literally like a doll, like it sort of dissects and it kind of dissects and then reconnects, the symbol of Barbie, right, and what it really means, back then and now, right? And this is where I'm gonna lead now to the Kubrick stuff, right? Don't worry, I'm gonna wrap up, right? So surprise, I love that it actually starts off with the same stuff that you see in the intro the first trailer with the 2001 reference. That actually catch me by surprise, eh? I just thought that was just promo stuff. I didn't know it was going to start the movie with that, right? But I love how they expanded it more where you just see the kids and they just slight spoiler and they're playing with baby dolls, right? That makes a lot of sense, right? So of course when Barbie shows up and you get that moment, also points for having that piece of orchestral moments from the the dark piece of music from 2001, and then you just get that you get that, right? That was great. It would be wrong of me to end this review without talking about Ryan Gosling though. He is the MVP of this entire film, though. His comedic timing was off the chain, though. He had me cracking up
Absolutely
from
brilliant.
start to end, boy. This dude is amazing, right? He just nailed that goofy. He's just this lovable doofus. That's what he is, right? But you could buy him in the real world, seeing men and just assuming, oh, it's about the patriarchy and it's about horses, right? I just love how childlike he is at it. He just sees things and just assumes that's what it is, right? And also points for incorporating sort of like a contemporary version of the 2001 song. That's all I'll call it. That's not the name of the song. It's actually something else, but I can't remember it right now, right? But yeah.
That's big Shah.
Yeah, does speak Zarathushka, if I butcher it. I'm sorry, right? Yeah, but how they work that in, because he's like it's a revelation for him, right? And that's where you get the moments with him at the hospital and asking, oh, can I be a doctor? Like stuff like that. I love. And that's where we get to the genius of the film itself, right? Because again, I'm just there thinking, oh, it's just gonna be about the two dolls in the real world, but no, they go back to the to Barbie world and they just kind of try to incorporate everything that they learned during this short stay, right? And yeah, how Ken kind of approaches life from that point on fits his character perfectly. It is just so dumb-headed, but it makes a lot of sense too. And I love how brave it is to kind of explore gender roles and just like, oh, that's what you think men are and this is how you think women are, right? So again, it just covers a lot of ground though. At times it could feel a little overwhelming, like almost like Greta's reaching a little too high, but nah, I like that. I like that she was reaching, right? So similar to Oppenheimer, this is a movie that I really do need to see again, but just more, even though I'm not really supposed to think about it that much, but just kind of like to dissect all the themes, right? And just the stuff that Greta was exploring with her story. And I should also mention too, her husband, Noah Baumbach, right? I just love that union between the two of them. I could just kind of see them kind of just working together with this film, right? So you get the male perspective, you get the female perspective, and it's kind of poking fun at both of them at the same time, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, it is just a celebration of, just identity and just knowing who you are and all that kind of stuff, which is, very, very strong themes, right? But yeah, as a whole, I really enjoyed this way more than I expected, actually. I just thought this was going to be, goofy, silly fun and whatnot, right? Kind of bordering on camp. Thank goodness it did not do that. Okay? If it bordered on camp, we probably would have gotten another Cats, right? Or whatever. But I applaud the ambition that went into it. Just touching on what Tracy said quickly, the production design though, I just love how, retro it is and how artificial it is as well too. I love the, the sort of classical takes on just the set design and all kind of stuff, the musical numbers as well too, kind of harken back to old school, musicals and whatnot. And just everything across the board though, just the imagination and the effort that they put into this film though, totally works for me, right? So yeah, believe it or not, this is one of my favorite movies of the year. Who would have thought, right? So yeah, color me pink, right? So haha. So yeah, rating wise for me, I'm gonna give this a strong 4 to a very light 4.5 out of 5, man. I really can't wait to see this again though. This is destined for cult greatness in my opinion though. This is a movie that, if you were to look back and, in terms of like best cult films of the 2020s, yeah, this one is definitely gonna be there, right? But even if you don't want to look at it as that and you just want to treat it as a, as a commercial hit, right? Because yeah, there's the thing about cult films and they usually have flops and blah blah blah, right? But I just more looking at it in terms of the aesthetic and what it is, right? It still works as just this really unique look at at gender and all that kind of stuff. It's just this really unique take, right? And I'll close with this, right? It's amazing that we now live in a world, Dread, where a movie like this is going to do numbers. And hopefully it will show not just the viewers, but just future directors that, yeah, you don't have to follow the, the generic, you don't have to do like generic stuff now. You could be bold and do something a little bit different, a little unique, right? And yeah, this movie is testament to that, man. So I wholeheartedly recommend this film, unless you just genuinely don't want to see it because it's titled Barbie. That's fine. That's okay. If you don't want to see it, that's fine. That's all I'll say. It's not going to be for everyone, of course, but still, if you know what you're going to get, I would say if you're really intrigued and you know what you're going to get yourself into, yeah, you will be pleasantly surprised by this one. Definitely will check it out. So, Ricardo, your thoughts on Barbie, followed by Riton.
Yeah. So I was make the joke. I think of this as the lean-in Lego movie, right? It's very sardonic. The sardonic serialism mixed with the magical realism really work and came together in this. And I like how Barbach and Gerwig, they come from the mumblecore school, and that kind of latent undertone of cynicism into the whole thing. So if you're gonna do a Barbie movie, yeah, you had to do that. You had to do the meta commentary and meta commentary about meta commentary and so on and so forth. Like I thought the story would have gone in different directions in a couple of places. Like I thought it would be much darker with respect to what's going on with her owner. But it's just more a cynical, real world beating down of this woman. And then it was kind of weird why Will Ferrell and them played the way they did. I think that was the only weak spot of the movie for me in terms of the humor. But yeah, I thought it just was just brilliant in its own conceit. Of course, because of Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu in particular, they come together. Especially that last little, I don't know what it was, that Jets versus Sharks. Was that right?
It looks like Grease to me.
It is, right. Yes. And before I forget, they actually saw a little snippet of Grease. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that little bit at the end. And yeah. The thing is, Robbie is pitch perfect for this across the board. She has to carry the gamut of real emotion versus this weird homunculi that Barbie's supposed to be, right? And it just comes together so well, and she's just absolutely perfect. And what they do with Rhea Perlman is brilliant. Like I love what they did there at the ending with her.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's just really fantastic. And just great conceits, editing, everything comes together. And yeah, it just a nice product that just have a lot of heart. I was cynical. Me was expecting something darker, but no, it's a family show. They do what they had to do with it, with the story.
Family in quotes, because there's still some jokes, No,
it's suggestive. It's still suggestive, but you don't go outright, cynical, dark. Like again, what I thought that somebody like her would have done. But Gerwig has also impressed me. I am in the camp that thinks Lady Bird is a bit overrated. But I thoroughly loved her Little Women. I mean, it was kind of criminal she didn't get nominated for that, to be honest.
Yeah, boy.
And for to come back and to do something like this is like, it's absolutely perfect. Perfect call for this kind of stuff. But it just came together, and I would listen. The end of the day, it was just funny as hell, Dread. Like, especially when Gosling and them come together, Dread, and what make it work is just the face is just this flat face, emotion stuff, and they make it work. Especially Simu Liu, he angry, but just as he's a Ken doll, it has to be the flat angriness. And that shit had me cracking up, Dread.
Yeah,
and it just everything is it builds. It's built into the caricature of, for lack of a better word, what toxic masculinity manifests as. But because it's the ridiculous Barbie world, it plays as fast, and they just nail that absolutely perfectly, and everything comes together so well. And they do it brilliantly in terms of Ken having his arc and Barbie being transcendent. That's just absolutely brilliant. That is what you're supposed to do with this material, and it just comes together so well. Rating. Yeah, I give this like a 8 out of 10, closer to a 9 actually.
Nice.
I just thought this was really excellent. As I said, if anything, I just felt some of the humor fell flat. Mostly the Will Ferrell stuff that just pulled it down. And again, I suppose it's because of the family stuff, but some of the jokes just fell flat for me. But again, a mainstream audience would laugh at stuff like that, I suppose. Maybe. That's about it. I just think this is what you have to do with this material. Because look, Barbie is this thing that just engulf popular culture for the better part of 60 years now. When Barbie came out, like 1958 or something like that.
59 or 58 or 59.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I knew, we're gonna do with this, and yeah, it's like this Lego movie all over again, right? You have to do it like that. You have to play for it on its face, but then get deep and philosophical for it in its own direction, and then get meta with it and come back full circle, and that's what we got. And it's just everybody across the board make it work. again, Robbie's the star. She really, really makes it work because she has to play a real person when she becomes a real person, and when real shit start happen to her, and then but play the weird homunculus creature, and they make that work. The magical realism and don't have to think about it kind of stuff makes it work in its own right, and all of that just come together so well. And I just love all of that. It really, really, really fantastic. There's a lot of Pee-wee's Playhouse in this. Like, anybody notice that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
I feel like that, like the little fake stuff, like the dog, with the shit and thing. That was just
Oh,
funny
God.
to me, especially in the weird Barbie house. Well, sorry,
there's some interesting parallels to like Pee-wee's Big Adventure in this
Yes.
movie. Like,
Yes.
it's like,
Yes.
yeah, and it just come together so well for me. But yeah, that shit was hard. Yeah, I forget. I talk about my girl. We call she weird Barbie. Slipping my mind right
Or
now.
Kate McKinnon.
Yeah. She was just perfect. There's one bit about it that just had me cracking up every time.
The split?
Oh, the splits, yes.
Yes. And it's something you would think about it, but again, in the context of the show, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when you mash up Barbie doll, it always split that. You can't fix
Oh,
it.
it's split.
Like that.
The rationale behind it.
I mean, everything just comes together. But yeah, rating. It's a 8 out of 10, closer to 9 to be honest, like my 8.6, 8.7. But I thoroughly love this one. It was really fantastic.
Right, and I forgot to mention too, this has probably the best mic drop, like the end and the final line. Probably the best mic drop of 2023 thus far, though. That final line, though, and again, going back to the audience, you're like kind of startled again, though. But I was like, pure genius,
And
pure
it also
genius.
probably answers the question that everybody would have been wondering at that point in time.
Exactly, the first question they had asked.
Exactly. And this last point on the soundtrack again, just having Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj's song come immediately afterwards, though, again, pure genius. I love it. I was smiling at that shit. I love that.
Someone said there is nothing on earth that will prepare you for the last line of the Barbie movie, and you know what? No, there isn't. There is nothing.
No, this is correct. This is correct.
Nothing.
But yeah, CC, take it away. Your thoughts on Barbie, and then we'll close things off with Summer.
Oh man. Okay, so there's a term that Greta Gerwig, I don't know if she coined this originally or she just kind of put a word to something that I have always loved. But she was when talking about the films that inspired Barbie and her approach to crafting Barbie world, she talked about authentically artificial.
Right.
Which I really like. I feel like that's kind of almost the thematic through line throughout the whole film. One thing, as someone who's been who loves to follow like production stuff and likes to follow production stuff and likes to like track unmade movies and movies that people tried to get made or like movies in development, things like that. Yes, for example, I've been following the recent news about the Masters of the Universe movie finally being dead at Netflix, like the one that they originally got from Sony, whatever. The history of Barbie is fascinating. And it's fascinating because of what we got. Because if you look at the history of Barbie and how many years Barbie as an IP has existed, and I'm not counting the direct-to-video movies, although I do know that those have a pretty substantial cult following among like young people who grew up with them in particular. Mattel have always been incredibly protective of the Barbie IP. Like, they have watched, of all of their properties, they're protective of all their properties, but in particular, Barbie, they have watched like a hawk for some... I think it's a combination of it's an IP that brings them a lot of money, and it makes them a lot of profit, but at the same time...
There's a great joke about that with Taxi Vision.
Yes! Oh my God. I remember that. No, and at the same time, though, Mattel is pretty aware of all the criticisms about Barbie. Like, they are very much aware of all of the different think pieces and essays and analyses and just like I feel like making fun of Barbie as being unrealistic to women has almost become a cliche at this point. Like, it's so ingrained into the popular consciousness. The idea that Barbie is like, that's why the Barbie, yes, I think Tracy mentioned it, but there was at one point a Barbie movie in develop back when Sony and Mattel had a partnership going. There was a Barbie movie in development with Amy Schumer as a fat Barbie who gets kicked out of Barbie Land for not being perfect enough and has to end up in the real world, and crap like that happens, which I'm really glad we didn't get, because I don't know, because yeah, it's very much sounds like the kind of movies that like at the time. Yeah, too cynical. Oh, yeah, much too cynical, but also very like expected. I don't know, like. I just feel like that particular era of like the 90s, 2000s, every single toy line or like cartoon show was getting some version of these characters are wacky and weird. Imagine if they were in the real world. And there are certain characters you don't want to imagine in the real world. But what I like about Greta Gerwig's Barbie, but also why this movie perplexes me, is that the whole movie, like the whole opening monologue where Helen Mirren very deadpanly explains like the history of Barbies, and then does the whole thing where she's like, and because Barbie was able to create all these aspirational ideas and images for women, sexism was solved and feminism triumphed, or at least so we tell the Barbies.
Right.
Which kind of for me set me up for the kind of movie I was about to sit, because Greta Gerwig's Barbie is not just a movie about Barbie. It's not even just a meta movie. As someone who's kind of been, I don't know, there's something about meta humor that's kind of been grating on me lately, like kind of irony and bathos and like a lot of that kind of stuff has been.
Yeah, it's called irony poisoning.
Irony poisoning.
It has been a problem for a while. Yeah.
Irony poisoning is
Velma as a very good example.
Velma, hate that shit. Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, and Velma's kind of exactly the problem, right? Where it's like, there's no plot to a straightforward Barbie movie. There was barely a plot to the straightforward G.I. Joe movies, and there certainly is debated how much plot there is in like a straightforward Transformers movie. So there was only going to be a metatextual way, but we have gotten to this point where irony and meta humor has become stale because everyone does it. It's become a cliche. And yet, Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach sit down and manage to come up with a way to make meta humor fresh again. Like, I feel like I'm back in the 90s or 2000s, especially like 2010s, when like the really good early meta stuff was like actually starting to come out and it was exciting and new. Like, it feels like, I think it's because Greta commits so hard to the artificiality of the Barbie world that when elements of our world invade the Barbie world, it generally feels jarring and shocking. Like, it wouldn't
upsetting.
That's what I say. They were the kind of two greatest come out of the mumblecore movement. That's why it worked. Because they were two bets for that. Yeah.
Like, it's like I think Greta herself was like, because in an interview she talked about how in Barbie world Ken comes from Barbie, so it's kind of the opposite of the biblical dynamic.
Right.
In like that's like kind of pushed in Western culture of women from men. Right. So, but what ends up happening is once you make that connection, people are going to look at your story in a very, like, in looking for the allegory. And yeah, there's a very strange aspect of this Barbie movie that's a retelling of the Garden of Eden, except Eve is Ken.
Yeah.
Eve is Ken. Like, and Ken is the one bringing back forbidden knowledge to paradise.
Yeah. Right.
Except,
Yeah, I disagree.
Except the forbidden knowledge. Like, it's insane. And what I love about the Barbie movie is that's just one element. Like, that's the kind of writing that most normal movies that would just be the whole plot. But with Barbie, no. That's just one of the many plots. Like, so Ken is bringing the forbidden knowledge of patriarchy back to Barbie world. Barbie is having a crisis because, you know, like reality is creeping in to her and like her mind and like her life in the most jarring, sudden way, right? Like, just when you're kind of getting lost in the escapism of Barbie world. You guys ever think about death? Like just when you're like, and what I love about that scene is it comes just when you're getting into the flow of how artificial Barbie world is, right? And there's all that stuff. Like, the Barbie movie is firing on like 5 different cylinders, and that's not even getting into all of the nerdy references to actual
the film
Barbie
culture.
stuff. I am not as much of a toy nerd as as some friends of mine. So there's like I know about like Magic Earring Ken, for example. Like that shit's hilarious. I didn't know about like Sugar Daddy Ken.
I did not know about that.
That was news
so
to me.
weird.
That was news to me.
It was a heist. And it felt like a vague something, but that was heist seeing that on screen.
To say nothing of, I think I lost my goddamn mind when it was like growing up Stacy.
Yeah. I actually remember that one and all the controversy that came along with it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh,
remember that advertisement? Yeah.
I lost my mind, like, because the problem with humor, like, the thing with humor like that is it's not like they're just inventing shit to be like crass or whatever. Like, they're pulling from the actual weird history of this toy line, and it ties into the film's larger idea of what does Barbie mean? Like, what does when we think of Barbie, when we think, like, what does Barbie as an idea represent, right? And it's weird because the movie doesn't actually come up with a definitive answer. It's a very open-ended movie in that regard. Like, the movie asks the question, what does Barbie mean? And it kind of says, I don't know, what does it mean to be a woman? A lot of different things, it turns out. In much the same way that, what does it mean to be a man? A lot of different things. Like, the movie, again, Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach kind of refuse to give a definitive answer. Like, they leave it very open-ended. They leave you have to figure out for yourself. Like, you have to figure out for yourself what these things mean to you and like what your place in the world is. Like, the Barbie movie is not going to tell you what your place in the world is and what it means, what your gender means to you. Like, but it is going to get you thinking about those questions and like asking them. All of this while being the funniest movie. Well, like up there with Guardians as the funniest movie I have seen this year. Like, it's so weird to think, because like my favorite Greta Gerwig movie is still Little Women. The only reason she didn't get an Oscar director nomination for that is because like literary novels, especially like, you know, ones with female characters, are mostly seen as like women's films, and women's films do not get Oscar attention. Like, that's what happens. So, but like, there is no reason Little Women should not have been nominated for an Oscar and Greta should not have won for Best Director. But it's so weird to see her go from that to Barbie, given that Barbie is her first out-and-out comedy. Like, I think her other films are much more dramedies. Little Women is much less, like, funny. But Barbie is her first straight-up comedy. And it is hilarious to see her kind of fit into this so naturally. Like, yes, Will Ferrell definitely is not as important to the film as the film itself sets him up to be, or the trailers do, but there's something about how he and Gerwig are clearly committing to the absurdity, right? Like even just of all the little things, like the scene when they're chasing Barbie around the Mattel offices, and the way he runs,
yes,
was crazy.
I thought he was a former Ken, you know. Like, that's why I thought the person was gonna be.
You know what? That actually tracks.
Yeah. But that's why I thought the plot was gonna be, and that's why I thought Ken's arc was gonna be, that he's gonna be part of the Kens and they're gonna rule in that way, something like that.
And just to touch on what you just said, Ricardo, maybe that's how he knows the direction, if you will, to go to Babylon.
Right. And how he knows it's possible to get in and get out and stuff. I know they
mention another person. Because they mentioned another person in Florida, another person who escaped, and I get the feeling they changed the script.
I think it was a skipper doll. That's Barbie's little sister or something like that.
Yeah, they also said that several Allens have escaped, but no one noticed, which is...
they say NSYNC or something like that.
Yes.
We went nuts when they talked about that whole Backstreet in sync.
Remember Backstreet Boys had that video where they had their strings cut and they would look like dolls in the video?
It's gonna be me video.
It's gonna be me. Yeah.
Like Alan, oh my god! Like there's just so
I'm Alan.
Like there's so much about the movie that just works on so many levels. Like it's just like it's a movie so full of ideas that even though in my I don't think there's ways and there's things about the film that I don't think quite work. Like, obviously, as some people have acknowledged, there's some jokes that don't quite land. There's a couple messy plot lines that don't get resolved. But it's so ambitious that I don't mind. You know what I mean? Like, it's so ambitious and it's trying to do so much that I respect it for the ambition and I respect it for how insane it is and how much it made me laugh. And also the very particular ways in which it kind of comes at it, in addition to everything else, it comes down, it's also a criticism of like, I don't know, like 90s, 2000s, like girl boss feminism, like the idea that the way to fix all the problems in the world for women is for women to be in business, right? Like,
that was it. I call it the lean-in Lego movie. It's the lean-in Lego movie. Think about it like that. That's all I think about it.
And it's genius. It's absolutely genius. So for what any of the problems I have with it that do like make it less than a perfect film, it's so ambitious and it's got so much going on, but also will gut punch you. The Billie Eilish song. That's all I'm going to say. Like the way that song is used. When it appears in the movie, it is it hits you like a truck. Just in context of everything happening, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I wasn't expecting this in a Barbie movie. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is the best Barbie movie we're ever going to get. Like, of all the different ways to make a Barbie movie, this is the approach that was always going to be the best way to do it. Like, there's no other approach that would lead to a movie even half this good, honestly. So, final rating, flaws and all, flaws and all, how hard it made me laugh, everything it's trying to do, the things it doesn't quite do, the things it does do, the commitment to the style, it comes down for me to an 8 out of 10. Like a very strong, solid 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5, like really damn good. And yes, I am hoping that people take the right lessons from a movie like this. I'm also still floored how Mattel, that has been so protective of the Barbie property so long, allowed Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach to get away with this movie. Like, I'm not unconvinced that Mattel never saw a final cut and that Greta Gerwig didn't just show up into theaters and start playing reels of this movie, because I don't know how the same studio that's been protecting Barbie so zealously for so long and has shut down so many previous films were like, yeah, we'll absolutely let you do the movie where a Barbie swears and we bleep it out with the Mattel logo. Like this,
genius,
genius.
There was a report though of two things. One, there was a report of Greta was talking about a scene that they had that Mattel was uncomfortable with, and the head of Mattel or whoever was very uncomfortable with, but she brought him down and she played it out with Will, and he was like, "Oh, I could understand." And I think it's that scene, without spoiling anything, where they talk about how many women have led Mattel and like how important gender equality is and everything. Because you have stuff like that, and even Margot was saying
stuff like that.
Like Margot was saying once, she said, when she got this script from Greta and stuff, she looked at it and she's like, wow, this is a beautiful script. They will never let us make it. So I'm saying, that was her only thing. This is beautiful. They'll never let us make it, and they did.
I'm also absolutely convinced that there are actual. It's my conspiracy theory, but I'm convinced that there are like actual notes from Mattel that made it into the movie. Like the whole bit where he's like, they're all standing around going, wait, how does this all end for Barbie? And the head of Mattel is like, she should end up with Ken. And the daughter says, that's stupid. And he says, oh, come on. You can't convince me that was not an actual note from Mattel at some point in development. Like, you can't. This is my conspiracy theory. But no, 8 out of 10, one of the strongest films I've seen this year, especially in theaters. And as I said earlier with Oppenheimer, given how many of the like big budget action blockbusters have kind of been underperforming lately, it's really refreshing to see a film like Barbie that's not an action film. And there's no way for it to be an action movie. Like, I'm sure like you could have like there could have been some climax where the worlds are colliding and they've got to race against the CG swirling thing to save the day or whatever. Like, but like
it did have the best action sequence of the year, in my opinion, though. That
was so over the top, though. I was loving it. I was loving it.
I loved
Kens versus Kens was awesum.
The Ken versus Kens, that just there are so many points in this movie where there's so many moments in this movie where I'm convinced that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach were writing it and went, this is kind of boring. How can we drop a piano on what's happening right now? You know what I mean? Like, because like right in the middle of the Ken thing, it turns into the Ken dance off or whatever, and it's like, like every time the movie just feels like it's getting into a rhythm, it's the wildest goddamn thing happens. So yeah, 8 out of 10. I really hope that this becomes. I'm hoping this becomes an influential film. Like, I'm noticing. I don't think that studios and the theaters were quite prepared for how big this movie was going to be. Like, when I went to see it, not only did me and the people I went to see it with have to book online beforehand because like screenings were selling out, but we picked a 9:55 screening and there was a line because they were frantically trying to clean the theater from the last Barbie screening before they would let us in for the first Barbie screening, and the line we were part of was just getting longer and longer, and then we still ended up with a 9:55 that had a pretty full house. I don't think theaters were prepared for how many people are seeing Barbie right now. I love all the pink. I really hope this is a movie that stays and becomes influential in like good ways.
Yeah.
8 out of 10.
Again, cult classic. I see this as a cult classic, right? So, Summer, to close things. Sorry?
Saving Private Ryan Gosling, right?
Yeah.
Hey, for real. Hey,
Right?
good one, Ricardo. Good one. Dude, make that a meme, eh? No, dude, make a meme.
Ben Adir's scream when their chests started to glow. I could not stop laughing. I could not stop. The timing was just so perfect.
So many little beautiful erotic moments inside that whole
Oh my god.
Right?
No.
Yes.
But yeah, Summer, your thoughts on Barbie and your rating.
Right. So as you know, I just saw it. So okay, I'll start by saying I was 100% anti-Barbie growing up. I grew up in my neighborhood, guys. There were no girls. I had 7 little boys that I grew up with, and I wanted to be one of them because that's how friendship works when you're that age. I wanted to be a boy. So my thing was G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man, and I detested anything to do with Barbie. And one birthday, somebody did give me a Barbie. She could swim. She had a dolphin. And I was so upset. I put her in a corner until we had to go to the beach. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to take it to the beach. And then we became a bit inseparable after that. I still used to fight against the whole thing because I looked at it as Barbie is for girls and I'm this tough tomboy and I don't want anything to do with her. So we fast forward and it's today and I'm going to see Barbie. And I'm still like, there's a part of me that's like, I'm not going to like this because it's Barbie. And I come out absolutely changed because this movie, first of all, like you guys said, visually, this movie, I can forgive a lot in terms of flaws when a movie has flaws, when I see the love and the passion for the project on screen. And that's in every frame of this movie. Near every frame, especially in Barbie Land. Those little details like when they drink, there's nothing in the cup, and they slide on her home. All these little things, the set pieces were brilliant, and I'm sure it's one of those movies. I'm sure if you watch it over and over and over again, there's so many Easter eggs that are related to Barbie hidden in those scenes. To the point that when she left Barbie Land, that's when I would feel like, I feel like that would drag the movie down a bit. As funny as a lot of those moments could be. But then we had Margot Robbie delivering an absolutely banger performance. I have to say, Ricardo just hit the nail on the head for me in terms of that, how she would go from that sort of robotic being, and that Margot would do these things. She's crying and she's smiling at the same time, and she have these moments, and you just every time she hit those emotional notes, I wanted to cry a little bit, because to feel that sense of I don't belong, I've outgrown this. You know how we outgrow Barbie as we grow up. She was outgrowing her own world, and that was just wonderful. All of those moments, and I mean, Ryan Gosling stole every scene he was in. He had me absolutely cracking up. I love the narration by Helen Mirren, how, as you guys said, how deadpan it was. And it even made me think of Birds of Prey, the way those Birds of Prey and Barbie are two movies that they don't really fit into any cubbyhole. You know, Birds of Prey is that superhero movie that is so different it became divisive. You know?
All right, someone, sorry to stop you there, right? But I am now picturing a future double feature, dread Birds of Prey and Barbie.
Thank you.
That is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you remember that not only is Margot Robbie in both, but they're both from her production company, which is why I'm so excited that her company also has the rights to Tank Girl.
Okay.
That could be really cool.
Right? It's that kind of originality that, say what you will, you are going to remember these movies 10, 15, 20 years down the road. The way some movies, you're just gonna, you watch it, you might even say, oh my God, I really enjoyed that. And then you're gonna forget most of it. I am not gonna forget 95% of this movie. So for me, the music, all of that worked. For me, the weakest points was when they were in the real world. I wanted more of Barbie world. And Will Ferrell was basically Lord President. Is that was his name in Lego Movie?
President Business.
President Business, right?
Yeah.
Listen, I love Will Ferrell. I always find him funny. And it's not that he's not funny here. It's just that he's the weakest element of funny here.
Yep.
You know, so... But the existential stuff, I am sure, like you guys pointed out, this movie does such a wonderful job of making fun of that toxic masculinity while also showing Ken finding himself and at least beginning that journey, you know. So they're not man bashing in this, you know. And at the same time, I know there's some people that are going to say, like America Ferrera's speech about what it means to be a woman.
Brilliant.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But I'm sure there are people out there who might think, oh, it's preachy, right?
Oh, yeah. There's already people doing that crap. Apparently, Ben Shapiro has already released a video about Barbie.
Okay.
I kind of want to see, but at the same time, I don't want to, you know, because Ben.
Right. That sadly, I know there are people who are just gonna miss the whole thing. They're gonna miss the point of it, you know. But this overall, like I said, I can forgive the flaws when the passion is there, and I see that passion all over this. I don't even begin to. I know Amy Schumer was supposed to make a Barbie movie at one point. And I know it would never have been anything near as good as this. And it probably would have destroyed any possible Barbie future going forward, Barbie movie going forward. And the fact that Mattel pokes fun at itself here, I mean, we all know that Mattel, it's their brilliance to it as well, because this is going to sell more toys. You know, Matthew, you talked about how he said that it's going to leak into the real world. And I myself thought I would see more of that. But you know what? There's a wink, wink nod to the fact that the Ken toys started selling even more when that happened.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. We watched G.I. Joe, when Hasbro made the G.I. Joe cartoon, the cartoon was made to sell toys. It was never about the cartoon. And so I feel like, you know, that's the joke here, is that it just, these things tend to be so entwined. You know, we see a movie and we want to have, as somebody who collects action, I have a lot of action figures, action collectibles. these movies do resonate with us and we want to keep a piece of it for ourselves like that. So I did love it, guys. I could forgive the flaws because of the fact that this gave me something that felt so fresh and original. And somebody swung for the fences, and even if they missed a little bit, I feel like I would take that over seeing another, sorry to say, generic Marvel movie or
Agreed.
DC movie. I want to see these out of the box things. Guardians of the Galaxy worked because it never tries to be just another one of these movies, even with studio interference. So I would give this a very, very strong 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, I just saw it. So yeah, I would need to see it again. And Matthew, you're so right. This one is going to be a cult classic. Absolutely.
Yes.